Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If you are returning, thank you for returning. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Katza, otherwise known as the Arcane Bohemian. Excuse me, I am just fixing up my candle situation at the moment while I am going to talk to you. This is probably going to be a little bit of a long video, so pause it, grab yourself something comfortable to wear, grab yourself a nice drink, okay? Because this might be a little bit of a heavy conversation today. I want to talk about the New Age community. And more specifically, I want to talk about the toxicity of the New Age community and the progression that I've watched occur. I know this is a lot. If you're listening and you're like, this is a lot that you're mentioning, I know it is, and that's why I said this is going to be a long video. There's this pattern, I'm going to say, that I've noticed in the New Age community. I've noticed it on Instagram. I've kind of noticed it on YouTube. It's funny because I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, and I was thinking about what I noticed on YouTube, and I noticed the issue on YouTube more probably about 10 years ago, around 2016, than I do now. And maybe it's just because back then I was in a different circle on YouTube. I don't know. But it was definitely a problem then. And now I'm not on TikTok, so I can't speak about TikTok, and I don't really do anything on Facebook. So I can't really speak about Facebook. But I do see this issue on Instagram, which is my info, shameless plug, is in the description box below. And it's the fakeness and inauthenticity of the New Age community. And not just the fakeness and inauthenticity, because really that's a really superficial thing. And I would say that that's not 100% accurate. I would say that it's more of the, I don't even know, honestly, what I would call it. But I would say it's more of the toxicity and spiritual bypassing that is becoming a problem. It's the fakeness that has overtaken this. I want to step back for a second. Back in 2006, 2007, 2008, when I was first starting to come online in this online space, when I was first starting out, YouTube was very, very young. It was quite new back then. And YouTube had people who were having discussions. And yes, it was, a little bit heated, I'm going to say, at times. There were people who disagreed. You had sections of YouTube. You had the pagan sphere, which was the sphere that I was in at the time. I was in this pagan area, and in the pagan area, you had all of these other pagans and witches and Wiccans, Dianic Wiccans, Gardenian Wiccans, people who were solitary practitioners, people who were not and were in covens. You had high and high priestesses. You had all these different merging of beliefs. And back then, yes, there were disagreements. And yes, there were some petty people. No one's going to say there weren't. But yes, there were some really petty people when it came to that space, when it came to that online space. There were a lot of really petty people who would bully others, would say that you're practicing the wrong form of witchcraft, would say that you don't know what you're talking about, would say that's not how the occult works, that's not how you do meditation, yada, 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 yada. That existed. But you know what? There was also a lot more discussion. There was also a lot more nuance. There was a lot more empathy. There was a lot more understanding. So even though there were people who, I'm going to say, were like large feuds that were in that community, there was this understanding that we're going to have a discussion either publicly or privately in the comments or in the DMs, which I haven't even noticed a DM section in YouTube anymore. And I think that's part of the problem. because the DMs were places where people could hash out their juice, and it didn't need to be public, and it shouldn't have been public, whatever their problem was with whatever was said. And then we also had video responses, which nowadays I'm noticing on YouTube, because I was off YouTube for over a decade and then I came back. I'm noticing the video responses aren't really a thing. But back in, 2008, 2009, 2010, when I first was starting on YouTube and I was in the pagan sphere on YouTube back then, the pagan occult witchcraft sphere, you had the option of video responses, which I think was a really, really good option to have. And you would watch someone's video and then you could create a video and you would tag them and that video in that response. And as far as I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that feature has since been long gone. And I think that that's really contributed to this decline, both societally and also within the New Age community itself. And it's the decline of nuance. It's the decline of, honestly, people calling other people out on their ish. Back then, people said what they said, and they might not have agreed with it, but they would call other people out and go, listen, it feels like you're really bypassing. It feels like you're using your spirituality as an excuse to not take responsibility. What I'm noticing now that is a massive problem is we're not doing that. The New Age community, and I don't even consider myself really part of the New Age community. If I'm going to be honest, I don't follow the traditional New Age beliefs. I don't follow the traditional concept of a god and goddess. I don't believe in covens necessarily. And I know that's super controversial, and maybe one day I'll do a video on that. But I don't believe in the concept of covens, or even the concept necessarily of the high and high priestess. I find that there's a lot of people who abuse those positions, and that also never gets talked about. It's never talked about in the New Age. We'll talk about it in every other religion, but we won't talk about it in New Age. And what I've noticed is through the years, and especially I would say the past decade, there's been this massive shift of inauthenticity within the New Age community. There's been this massive shift of what I want is money, what I want is views, what I want is clients, and I don't care the cost. This is what I'm going to do. Those of us that remember this 2006 to 2010, 2011, 12, all the way up to 2016, that first decade, from 2006 to 2016, that decade of YouTube, in terms of the New Age, witchy, spiritual, greater spirituality, however you choose to label it, sphere, you remember that, people said this that they wanted to say. And yeah, there were discussions, but people had a lot more respect for that opinion. We weren't out there trying to gain clients and trying to make money and trying to scam people all the time. There was a lot more genuine help and genuine feedback during that decade. Something happened in 2016. And I don't know really. From a technological perspective, I couldn't tell you if there was something significant technologically that occurred in 2016. I don't remember, and I honestly didn't look it up before filming this. But there was definitely this shift that started occurring in 2016 in the New Age community. 2016, we started to have a purge of people from the scientific community who were coming into the New Age community. And I think that was a really good thing. Okay, that was kind of the first big purge. But with that, we also had people who were established within that community who were leaving it. You had people who had businesses, who had books and cards, who were leaving it, who had found Jesus and were converting to Christianity. I'm not saying that that's necessarily right or wrong, but there was this transition that occurred. And it worked. It worked up until about 2018. Because when 2018 hit, there was another wave of people who left, the oldies, I called them, who left. A few people passed away in 2018. if we're going to be honest, those deaths were really, really difficult. Even for me, to this day, one of those people was a really good friend of mine. Her passing hit me really hard, honestly. And I still struggle with it to this day. And with that, we also had people who, again, had found Jesus and they left, okay? And I use the term found Jesus because that's the terminology they were using during that time. Okay, oh, Jesus came to me and Jesus showed me how I was following the path of the devil, and they turned into massive Bible thumpers. Now, I'm not necessarily against you changing your spirituality. That's obviously personal to you. But I do find it really interesting when you start noticing massive amounts of people who leave one and start shifting to another. And it's almost like this train, this spiritual loophole, this spiritual train. And that's when I start questioning the authenticity of it. As this was occurring, we also had younger people who were raised a lot more with technology, were raised with their phones and their computers. They were not raised in my generation in the 80s and 90s, where you had no access. You didn't have a phone that went around with you. You didn't have a tablet, laptop. Those weren't things. Okay, you had a computer room. Okay, and that was like, whoa, you have a computer room? You were well off if you had a computer room. Otherwise, your computer was like stashed in the middle of the living area and people were outside. So the level of spirituality that developed as a result from that generation, which was the 2006 to 2016 YouTubers, was based on nature. It was based on being outside. It was based on growing up outside. It was based on this ideology and this belief that we should be connecting to animals and we should be connecting to nature and we should be doing all of these things. And it's going to benefit us as humans to live coherently within this. And this, we called this paganism as a general term. And then, you had people who were solitary Wiccans and then Dianic Wiccans and Gardenian Wiccans. And, they followed, the Raymond Bucklands and the Jared Gardners, and there was a whole thing. And then you had the whole controversy that I don't even know if it's still a controversy. I don't even know if people, even this generation, new generation of new agers, even knows this was a controversy about Silver Ravenwolf. I have one of her books there, actually, Solitary Witch. And I do still recommend that book, despite the controversy about Silver Ravenwolf and how this was fluffy bunny magic and this was illegitimate and she isn't grounded and she doesn't follow anything. And are there parts in that book, Solitary Witch, that are factually wrong? Yes, there are. There are. I'm not going to lie. You do need to read sections of that book with a little bit of discernment. But, I do still think that book is an amazing foundation and it's a great basis for you to start your journey. Okay, especially if you want to look at things overall, you're not really sure what you believe, you think you're into paganism, but you're not sure. That book really does give an overall view of the god and the goddess and the pagan wheel of the year, which is based on the Celtic wheel of the year. Again, that was a whole conversation between 2006 and 2016 that was had on YouTube that has since been lost. Then you had these new kids that were coming in, and it's not necessarily their fault. I'm gonna preface this with that. When this generation that came in, you had this generation who didn't spend as much time out in nature, but were trying to talk about and connect with these practices, but also weren't comfortable outside. They weren't outside. They don't know, and they still don't know, but they think this is cool. So they like the aesthetic of it. And now we've reached this pinnacle point. We've reached this point, if we're going to be honest, where there's this divergence that has occurred, right? You've got what I call the OGs, the oldies from the early 2000s who are in this space who honestly we don't have YouTube the way it was now. You know, we were the ones that were creating YouTube at that point. We didn't have all this knowledge. We had a few set books. We had Silver Ravenwolf, you had Gerald Gardner, you had Raymond Buckland. Okay, you had, who was the other one? Actually, hold on. I don't think his book. Oh, his book is here. Sorry, I just have it in a different section. You had John Holland, okay? And then you also had Gordon Smith, okay? And that was it, really. You know, if you wanted to learn about psychic abilities, you would and mediumship, you did John Holland, Gordon Smith. If you were into witchcraft and Wicca, you know, Wicca was really taking off, kind of had like their second wave during the early 2000s. So Gerald Gardner and Raymond Buckland were really in this space back then. Then a little bit later on, around 2010, 2012, Christopher Penczak came in the space. And also that's when Jason Miller started being a lot more popular, was in and around, I believe it was around that time period that Jason Miller also started to be popular. And that was really it. That was your foundational base. That was what you had. Anything else you learned from experience. You learned from being outside. You learned from sitting and meditating and doing the work. And then you were coming onto YouTube and you were sharing that with people. You were sharing this revelation you had when you were sitting in meditation in your front yard or in the middle of a forest somewhere, or when you were walking your dog. You were sharing this, and then people were creating this community. And then from this community that was being created, people were, you know, realizing that they had very specific interests. Some people were really into crystals, and some people were great herbalists, and some people were really into creating oils, and infused oils and ritualistic oils. And some people were really into creating incense, and others were into, you know, candles came a little bit later on. To be honest, it wasn't so much of a hype back then. So you started realizing, and then people would make little witchcraft kits. I don't even know if people still do this, actually. I haven't seen anyone talk about this in probably 10 years. But people used to make little witchcraft kits, and they used to send them out. Okay, if you're going to become, you know, part of my membership program, here I'm going to send all of you in part of my membership program this little witchcraft kit. And it would be a candle or 2 candles in every color. And it would be some sage and some Palo Santo and, you know, some other little generic witchy trinkets. Maybe it would be the pentacle on a little charm. It might be a goddess on the little charm, you know, okay. It might be the triple goddess with the pentacle in the middle. Might be a necklace that they made, things like this. That is largely gone now. And what has been replaced with it is, in my opinion, quite fraudulent. It's not this legitimate, authentic form of spirituality anymore, the way that it used to be. What's replaced it is this fakeness. Okay. And it's because we have this generation. And again, I'm not 100% blaming this generation that was raised solely with technology. When they did that, what they did is they had all this information that was given to them for free, which is not necessarily bad if you know what to do with it. And they just took that and they started recopying it and putting their opinions into it. But your opinion is not spiritual. Your opinion is your opinion, but your spirituality is not and should not be a set of opinions that you hold. And then we lost the basis of it. The basis of it was preservation and conservation of the natural world. The basis of it was to learn to live in harmony with nature. When you look at the New Age community, that has largely been lost. Now the New Age community is filled with people who are so busy trying to prove that they are more psychic and more medium and more spiritual and more developed, and they're ascending faster. But the basis of that originally came from nature. It originally came from this connection to nature, and that connection to nature is no longer in the New Age community for a vast majority of people. The connection to nature is largely gone. It's largely done for. And so we have all these people who are on this space. And what's happened now, and I would say especially since 2019, I would say probably since 2020, the end of 2019, 2020, up until now, the time that I'm recording this video, is there's been another shift in this community where, honestly, the people that are there, they're not spiritual. They play spirituality for the camera. They play spirituality for Instagram. They play it for YouTube, but they're not embodying it. And it's becoming more and more obvious, at least to me. It's becoming more and more obvious. I know that it's not becoming more and more obvious. And the reason I know that is because a lot of these people also have very large followings. And I'm not against having large followings. I'm not against having a lot of people follow you on social media. That's how that runs. But in order to get that and in order to build that really quickly, two things have to happen. The first one is you have to follow an algorithm. If you want to be real, you want to be honest, spirituality does not follow an algorithm. New Age does not follow an algorithm. Paganism does not follow an algorithm. Okay? Greater spirituality of any sort, from any religious background, any spiritual background, does not follow an algorithm. And then the second thing is that so you have the split that occurred, right? You have a lot of people who are in this space who think that they can come in and they don't have any knowledge really. And anything that they know is things that they have watched online because they haven't legitimately gone out into nature and done the work. And so there's been this separation that has occurred. There's been this separation between, okay, this was a movement that was founded and based on the concept and the idea of animism, the idea that there's spirit within everything, the idea of we need to go and we need to connect to our spirituality in nature. That is largely gone now in the age of technology. In the age of technology, these kids that are in this space now, they are not having that mentality of needing to go and needing to be outside to connect to spirit, to connect to God, to connect to nature, to connect to the goddess, whatever it is that you choose to believe. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. Now it is very technological based. It's all about the views. It's all about money. It's all about the sponsorships. It's all about these various things. It's because we've become so materialistic, because this movement has become so materialistic. Now we're starting to see, and especially as of 2020, we're starting to see a lot of actors in it. And these actors are not very spiritual at all. In fact, some of them don't know a lick of spirituality. And what these actors are doing is these people have a lot of issues for whatever reason, okay? They have issues because they weren't told no in their life. They have issues because they don't have discipline and they weren't taught discipline. They don't read as much. They're less literate. They don't write as much. They don't have the memory capacity. They don't know nature because they never went out into nature. They're a lot more fear-based. And what they've done is instead of dealing with that issues, they project that into their community and claim it that it's spirituality. They project that, all of their trauma, all of their issues, all of their mental ish, they project that out and they claim that that's spirituality. I've noticed this also with some of the readers, okay, tarot readers, oracle readers, is you can start to see that they're projecting a lot of their trauma into the reading. Okay, and it starts becoming obvious as the reading progresses that the reading's not really a reading from spirit. Okay, the reading starts to get, really, kind of hateful sometimes. And that's when you realize that that person is just projecting their feelings about a situation onto the reading. They're not really reading. They're not looking at it from various angles. They're just projecting their own problems and they're making it fit within the reading. And you notice this sometimes also when the same message comes out again, but it's not progressive at all. So it's the exact same message, just worded different ways. And it's not progressed at all. It's not telling you to do something different. It's not targeting a different audience. It's the same people always. And it's just projection, 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 projection. And as a result, we now have a lot of people who are really, really lost. We have a lot of people who have come into this community, this spiritual community. Some of these people identify as New Age. You had a lot of people who came into it and they're getting mixed signals. They're getting, people who are saying that, everything is love light. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on my issue with the love light movement. Okay. Love, light, and blessed, or love, light, and happiness. What was it? There was a period that was like super popular. Be like love and light. Okay. Does anyone remember that period on YouTube where like every single witch on YouTube was going love and light? Okay. And drove me bananas. Absolutely drove me nuts. But anyways, and that's where we're kind of at right now, is this community is filled with frauds. And the problem is that there's a lot of oldies, and I myself am included in this, where I don't really care about the views. I'm not doing this for a massive channel. I'm not doing this because I think that I want 1 million followers or 1 million subscribers or whatever. I'm doing this because we need to have real conversations again. I'm doing this because I genuinely want to help people. And unfortunately, that genuineness of wanting to help people has been lost. The concept, the ideology that we are doing this to help others, that's been lost. Now it's about money. Now it's about making fast money. Now it's about getting the followers and getting the subscribers so that you can get sponsorships. And I'm not saying that it's bad to have sponsorships. I'm not saying that it's bad to have a bad following. What I'm saying is that it's fine if you're doing it for the right reasons. And 99% of people, that's a little bit high, I'm going to say 95% of people are not doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it because they don't want to deal with their ish. So what are they going to do? They don't want to deal with their ish, and they don't want to do... Okay, sorry everyone. The camera on my sorry everyone. The battery in my camera went out. So I'm not really sure 100% where it cut off, but let me just check this mic. I think it's okay. It's showing up okay there. So I'm going to assume it's okay. I don't want to put the viewfinder up again. So I forget a little bit about where I left off, how much got cut off with the battery dying. But what I'm trying to get at here is that what's happened is that we have so many people who are not spiritual anymore. So many people who aren't in the real magic anymore. They're not doing ritual anymore. They're not connecting anymore. And there's a lot of people who are focused in this community on being right, making money, and avoiding processing their ish. And every single one of those things is coming from ego. Every single one of those things comes from an egotistical place. It does not come from being humble, and it does not come from healing, and it is not a place of spirituality. And so you've got everyone who's so focused on being right, okay? Those are your Instagram sidekicks, your Instagram mediums, your Instagram prophecy tellers, fortune tellers, whatever, who every single time, oh, look, I made a prediction about this, or I did this, or I said that this was going to happen. And it doesn't matter how vague it is, that is somehow proof that they were right. And there's this focus on, see, this is proof I'm right. That's a manipulation tactic, by the way, that is often used. So there's this focus on, oh, see, I was right, and see, this proves it because I said that this was going to happen, and look, this happened. Because it happened, it just didn't happen here. It just happened on the other side of the world, but it doesn't mean I was wrong. Okay, you see what happens there? So there's this constant need for validation, this constant need to be like, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, and don't tell me otherwise. And then you've got the money hungry people, right? And I'm not saying that you should not be charging for your gifts. I'm not saying you should not be charging for your expertise. I 100% believe that you should be charging for what it is you do. But when you are not qualified to do something, that's a different story. Okay, I'm going to give you an example with myself personally. I teach about shamanism, or I will teach about shamanism. I'm currently editing a course all about shamanism. I do a shamanic practice. There's a section of my practice that is based in shamanism, but I do not publicly do shamanism. And what I mean by that is I am not publicly going and giving and taking people through journeys. I am not taking people through, tours of these different realms. I am not doing soul retrievals for other people. Even though I've done them for myself, I do not do them for other people. Now, why? Because I personally don't believe that my area of expertise is in doing soul retrievals for other people. I don't think that that would be an area that I'm very good in. So it's not something I offer, despite the fact that it's something that I've done many, many times for myself. It's something that I have researched extensively about, I've read extensively about. I've done thousands of journeys into all of the different realms, and I'm still not going to come and do a one-on-one guided journey with you. That's not something I offer. Okay, I will teach you about it. I will teach you what a journey is, but that's not something I offer. There's been this loss that has occurred where people are assuming that just because they've taken a course on something, oh, I took one course over the span of 2 weeks on reading for Akashic records, and now I'm going to charge people $175 for an hour of doing Akashic record readings. That I disagree with, because I don't believe that you can get enough experience within 2 weeks of studying something, anything actually, to then be able to offer it as a service. That's not true. And this is something that we're seeing again and again. And this is especially prevalent. I have a friend of mine, she really likes to go to psychic fairs. And so every, 4 or 5 months, she drags me and she says, can we please go to the psychic fair? And she's an older woman. And so she's not the most mobile. So I'm kind of her driver. And I see this a lot at psychic fairs where they give you this paper. I'm going to use this picture of a loon as my example, okay? So we're going to say that they give you this paper and it will be the tiniest print. I'm talking about like size 8 print. And it'll be like all the offerings, and it'll be spirit life coaching, spiritual coaching, one-on-one coaching. I'm not really sure what the difference is between one-on-one coaching and life coaching, but okay. Spiritual mentorship, life mentorship. Well, what's the difference between the mentorship and the coaching? It kind of sounds like you're just changing the terminology. Tarot reader, oracle reader, rune reader, stick reader, bone reader, seashell reader, Akashic record reader, and it's kind of like this list that really has no meaning at the end of the day. And you start to wonder, well, how much does this person actually know? Okay. And then I remember the last one I went to, which was quite recently, there was actually even someone there who had like alchemical reading. And I thought to myself, how on earth are you doing an alchemical reading? And what does that even mean? And you start to realize that really these people are just kind of making up because it's convenient, because it's going to make them money, because they think it's cool, because that's their focus. Because their focus is no longer about helping people. Their focus has now shifted into, we want to be making money. And unfortunately, those types of people especially really prey on people who are in really vulnerable situations, because people in vulnerable situations will pay to leave their vulnerability, whatever that is. People who are really lost in their life and are looking for purpose and meaning will pay if they think someone can tell them about their purpose and meaning. Right? Because humans innately want to do the fast thing. They want to have the quick answer. They want to have the quick instantaneous, this is my purpose, this is what I'm here for, and this is what you have to do. And if you do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, everything's going to happen perfectly, like a little cake. You can pull it out of the oven in, 45 minutes and everything's going to be cooked and fit perfectly. That's not how life is. It's not how humans are. That's not how we're supposed to be. I personally don't believe, anyways, that's how we're supposed to be. And I don't think that your creator, if you believe in a creator, however you choose to identify that creator, designed us for it to be that way. And I think that that was designed intentionally for a reason. Okay. And so you have the people that are in this money hungry state who do feed off of that. It gets out of hand, and everyone knows. I mean, not everyone knows, but I'm assuming there was a period where everyone knew, at least, about people who would do readings. And this was unfortunately popular for a time, where people would go and say, oh, I'm going to do a reading for you. And they would be there, okay, and they would have their deck, and then they would pull, oh, this is a good card actually that's on the bottom here, and they go, oh no, you've got the devil card, sweetheart, you need to have a clearing done. You need to make sure that your house is clear. There are evil attachments to you. For an extra $250, I can do a clearing on your body right here. But if you want me to do your house, I'm currently running a promotional, and it's $1,500, and I'll clear your body, your spirit, your partner's spirit, your children, and your house. Well, remember that stage of readings? If you've been around a while, you might remember that, where they were using tarot, or they were using whatever to really bring in this fear. And that's honestly also why I think there is fear regarding tarot. I think that's also why there is fear regarding certain cards in tarot. I think that time period really did muck up a lot of different things regarding tarot. And again, I'm going to do a different video on that, because that's a whole other route that I could do. But I do think that did occur. And I think that period of time that has since come and gone in various aspects, in various ways, and I would say that this is really no different, that's currently occurring in the New Age community, really was no different. That contributed to this fear around tarot, this fear around the Tower card, or the Ten of Swords showing up, or the Devil card showing up. Oh, it's ominous. Or the Death card showing up. It's ominous. And then, of course, media plays into that, right? And I think that's the other thing, is when you have a generation of people. I know I'm digressing a little. I'm gonna come back to this third point. You have a generation of people who grew up with technology. Where are they learning this stuff from? They're learning it from media. They're learning it from Stranger Things. They're learning it from, Harry Potter. Not that I love Harry Potter, by the way. I'm not bashing Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. But there's just this misunderstanding of what it is, One of my all-time favorite movies is Practical Magic. I'm so excited they're making a second one. I can't wait. I really wish it would come out sooner. But Practical Magic, and one of the things I like about Practical Magic, yes, there's that whole, they jump off the roof, and okay. But what I like about Practical Magic is it kind of does talk about the dangers of magic. It's very balanced, yes, you can do magic and you can do these nice little frivolous things. And obviously it's a movie, so obviously Sandra Bullock's character, who I can't remember her name right now, is there, and she doesn't mind. She'll stir her coffee with her finger, or her hands on the cup, and the coffee is stirring automatically. And okay, yeah, there's, that magic. And it's kind of very exemplary of this very homey base magic. But then there's the other side of it and if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, I probably should have mentioned that. Spoiler alert here if you haven't seen the movie. And I do love this movie. I do highly recommend it. There's the other side of it where her sister, which is played by Nicole Kidman, I think her name is Sandra. Is it Sandra or Sandy or something in the movie? And then her sister's name is Jilly or Jillian. And so anyways, her sister is in this is considered to be less magical. And I don't think that it's actually she's less magical. And I think the movie kind of does a good job of this. It's not that she's less magical. It's not that she knows less. It's that her strength is in a different area than what her sister's is. And so she ends up having to go, and they end up in self-defense, killing her boyfriend, who is being very abusive and threatening them and kidnapping them with belladonna. Okay, the facts around that a little sketchy. We're gonna be real, but the premise of it, is okay. Well, I don't care. He needs to come back because of the fear of the justice system, and so they do the bit of dark magic, and it completely backfires on them, right? And it's really a good example, in my opinion, if you really think about it from a more critical lens, to an extent, a more abstract point of view, it is a very good movie that talks about the realities of magic. It does talk about the realities of spellcraft. It does talk about the realities of when you're trying to mess with things that aren't meant to be messed with, and how that does create its own set of complications, and it does create its own set of circumstances, and it does create its own set of problems. And that nuance is largely lost now. Okay? And that nuance is largely lost. So you have the section that has to be right all the time, that egotistical section. And then you've got that money hungry section. Okay, you then have this final group of people. And this final group of people are the people who avoid processing their ish. Okay, this group of people are the people who, honestly, they don't want to do the work, but they want the money. They want the good parts of these two areas. They want the money and they want to be right. They don't want to have to do the work to do any of that. So they don't want to have to actually do the shadow work. They don't want to have to meet their shadow, and they don't want to have to deal with it. So they tell everyone else to do it, tell everyone else to do the shadow work, but they've never done shadow work. They'll be the first ones to tell everyone else that they need to follow the cycles of the moon, but they don't follow the cycles of the moon. They'll be the first ones to tell everyone that you need to practice the sabbats and the esbats, or you need to take time away or whatever. They don't do that. Okay, and this comes through a lot in projection. Right? You see this a lot in the New Age community in regards to projection. You see this a lot in things that just don't add up. Just doesn't make sense. Right? You can tell there's also, I put them in the same group, but maybe I should have put them in a separate group, is the people who go and they do the whole mystical thing, right? There's like an act, they dress up the specific way, and then they have the whole faux persona that's there. Okay, that is a character, and that's also not spiritual. And I don't even think that there's anyone who can genuinely say that that is authentic. Right? And I get it. There was a time period when you look at the history, especially back in the 1800s, 1700s, the 1800s with the spiritualist movement that came along, especially with the Fox sisters, where we did have this more comical, dressy, performative type of spirituality, and that existed because back then it was a performance for a lot of people. Were there legitimate people? Yes, there was. And then you did have, magicians like Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini spent decades of his life debunking mediums, debunking people who were claiming that they were psychic and claiming that they were mediums because they put on this act. And Harry Houdini was someone who, he was a magician and he knew every single trick that could possibly occur. And so he went and he did go about and he would say, this is an act and this is how I know because I'm a magician and this is what I do for a living, is I try to pull the wool over your eyes, and this is how this would go down. Okay, and whether you think that that was appropriate for him to do or not, or whether you think that that was okay or not, that is a little irrelevant, because really what we're seeing is the same thing now. It's just in a different cloak. It's just different, because now you've got the filters and now you've got people or online. And now you've got the people who, you know, they spend so much time online, and now you've got AI. Oh, AI. And I do think that AI is not good on so many levels. And I don't think that you can claim yourself to be a grounded spiritual person, a grounded witch, a grounded pagan, even a new ager, however you choose to identify with that, and say that we should use AI and that AI is okay. I don't think you can reconcile those two things, because the damage that AI does on the environment goes against the basis of paganism and witchcraft and Wicca and really New Age, which has been stemmed from that. So I don't think you can reconcile those two things honestly within yourself. And yet we have, again, an entire generation that tries to do exactly that. They try to reconcile these two opposites, okay, within themselves, right? And they've lost track, okay? And they've lost track because they're easily manipulatable. They fall for the propaganda. They don't know discernment, because you can't know discernment if you're not dealing with the in your life. If you're not having the wherewithal and the awareness to understand what's happening in your life, how are you going to have the discernment to see into others? How are you going to have the discernment to see into greater society? How are you going to have the discernment to see into the bull that is politics and all of that? You can't, because you didn't deal with your own past. You didn't deal with your inner child wounds, or you didn't do the shadow work. You didn't deal with your shadow. You haven't integrated it. You haven't done all of these things at the end of the day. So how are you supposed to do that? How are you supposed to then have the discernment when you can't have it within your own life? How are you supposed to then have enough of it to recognize other things outside of your life if you can't have it within yourself? If you can't be critical of yourself, if you can't accept criticism. The huge problem too also is I sometimes laugh. I was talking to someone, and I said, you know, this new generation of new agers would never have been able to deal with YouTube back in 2006, 2007, 2010. They would not have, they would have been eviscerated, because they can't deal with any level of criticism. They can't be told they're wrong. They can't be told that this is improper, or it's unethical, or it's immoral, right? Because that's not their values. That's not their grounds anymore. Now that's all taboo, right? So they can't be told that anymore. And it's really interesting how that's come about. How you see that. And they would. Honestly, if you look at some of the old videos, and you do have to really look at them now, they're a lot more difficult to find now. But, you look at some of these old channels, and you look at some of their comment sections, this pansy generation that's coming up here, they would not be able to handle the criticism. They can't handle criticism to start off with. They don't even recognize it as criticism. So we're back to this whole idea, really, of the loss of the New Age community. I would say really that a good portion of the New Age community is no longer New Age. I would say that they're no longer spiritual. I would say that it's really not about spirituality for a lot of them at this point. I would say a lot of them, it's about keeping up a facade, putting on a mask, having pretenses, putting up pretenses, and not being real with themselves. Really not being real with themselves. And it's a massive problem within the community. It really legitimately is. The victimization, the victim complex that people have in this community and in the world in general is a massive problem. And I think that if you have such a high victim complex and you're in the spiritual community, I don't think you're really that spiritual at the end of the day. You're not very grounded in your spirituality, are you? If you're claiming that you're the victim of everything, you can't possibly be that grounded in your spirituality. It's the fall of the New Age community, I guess is what I would call it, to an extent, because it is. because it's not there and it's not legitimate and it's not authentic. And there's so many deceivers now. And there's so many people who think that they're these all-powerful people, and that's all they're looking for is power. At the time that I'm filming this, there's a series of files, I won't name them because I don't want to be demonetized, that came out, and there is a name, Deepak Chopra, that is named in those files. And I remember back, Deepak Chopra was a huge name. And I remember everyone used to get angry at me and used to say, oh, did you read this book by Deepak? You should take this course by Deepak. And back then, this would have been, 10, 15 years ago. Back then I said no. And they would go, why not? He's got amazing stuff and he's so spiritual. And he's so all this. And he was very popular. And I'm not downing that he had some good things that he said. But here's the thing. Hitler had some nice quotes as well. No one who understands history is turning around and saying Hitler's a good person. Being a good person and being able to talk eloquently are two different things. And Deepak is an example, in my opinion, of someone who was able to talk very eloquently. But there's no way that he embodied his spirituality. And I remember I received a lot of hate. I was heavily doxxed. I was heavily targeted because I spoke out and I said I will not support Deepak Chopra and I don't support his work. And I said I don't have a reason. I've got nothing against him personally. I just don't feel that there's something off. And I remember I got heavily doxxed. I got the hatred, the visceral hatred that I received because I said that I don't follow Deepak Chopra and I don't resonate with his teachings and something just feels off and I'm not going to take part of that. During the time where this man was being put on a pedestal, really, and kind of worshipped within the New Age community, didn't go over well. And now it's out that, Deepak Chopra, he had a very dark side. And one that is not compatible with any form of true spirituality, that is not evil, okay? And definitely not compatible within the basis of New Age or paganism or just general spirituality. And it's been really lost, I would say. It's been lost. That discernment, has been lost because now everything is propaganda. And once you start to see it, you can't unsee it. And I think there's a lot of people within this group over here who don't want to deal with their own ish, that they choose not to see other evils because it's easier. But they still want the money. And they still want to have all those followers. And they still want to have this persona that they are these really spiritual people. And they're not. And the online New Age community is filled with them. Filled with them. So many people. And some have no followings. Some have huge followings. Some have mediocre followings. It really doesn't matter. You can't use those metrics anymore as a determination. Back in the day, when YouTube was first baby YouTube, I call it, back in 2006 to 2010, we used to use the metrics. This person's got so many subscribers, they probably have a lot of good information on their channel. Sometimes you would look and you'd say, this person's only got 2 subscribers. But they only have 1 video. Okay, well, give it time. They're new. Right now, you're watching people make an Instagram page and within a week have 10,000 followers on Instagram. That's not organic. That's not the legitimate. And they're putting out all this AI content about spirituality, about being spiritual. This is the discernment that needs to be had, and it's a discernment that's lost. And we need to start normalizing again, criticizing people. We need to start normalizing again, calling people out and saying, listen here, you're wrong. Sorry. There's no moral or ethical compass that claims that you can be a pagan and then also to partake in the destruction of the planet via using AI for all of your content. It doesn't add up. So something's got to give. Either you're stopping using AI or you just admit that you're not a pagan, that you don't practice earth-based spirituality. And you're not, that's fine. That's fine. If you're not New Age, that's fine. If you're not spiritual, that's fine. If you're not whatever, that's fine. But don't claim you are when you're not. Anyways, I feel like now at this point I'm just rambling. And so I'm going to leave it there. I probably should have scripted this video, honestly, and I didn't. But I'm going to leave it there. And I know it's really long. I'm going to try and edit it down some because I think I was pretty repetitive at points. And yeah, let me know. Let me know what you think, especially if you've been around this for a while being a couple, you know, at least 10 years. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you've seen or haven't seen that you wish you would have saw. You know, because I do think there's the whole talk about, you know, light and dark spirits, you know. And I think that there is now this fusion, right, that's kind of occurring where people are claiming that they follow a path of like light spirits when really they don't. And if you don't even know what the path of light spirits looks like to start off with, how are you going to recognize that they don't follow it? It's quite a predicament to be in, actually. But anyways, let me know. Comment down below. Like, subscribe, please. Helps out the channel. Allegedly it helps me out. I don't even know how YouTube works anymore because it has been really long. And I'll see you later. I'll see you in the next video if you all stick around. Until then, bye for now.